Hello and welcome to the Overland Journal podcast. I am your host, Scott Brady, and I am here with my illustrious co-host, Matt Scott.
I am sitting in the general vicinity.
Who does have some news he's going to share with us in a couple of minutes. So
lots of news.
Excited to hear about
big news. Actually, news on two fronts that are very significant.
Okay. All right. So you'll have to stand by for that. The most important person in the room is Nena Barlow. Nena has been in this industry for nearly 30 years and has literally changed the landscape of much of what we do, particularly around events and four-wheel drive training and vehicle rentals. So her business is expansive and services our industry in many different ways. Of course, with all of that time, you've gained so much experience and knowledge. So we're going to ask her a bunch of questions today, not only about how did she get to this point, but the lessons that Nena has learned along the way. So Nena, thank you so much for being on the podcast.
Thanks for having me. My honor.
We're going to take a brief break and we will be right back. This week's episode is supported in part by iCamper. They make innovative hard shell and soft-sided roof tents that are designed to survive long-term overland use. Their revolutionary X cover won the Overland Journal Editor's Choice Award, eliminating the bulky PVC cover and also allowing for the fitment of crossbars for carrying bikes and kayaks. Their SkyCamp Mini is another award-winning design that provides a hard shell tent in the footprint of a much smaller clamshell model. This is the perfect solution for smaller vehicles or on vehicles where rack space is dedicated to other systems. iCamper believes that the best times are those spent traveling, discovering the world with those you love most. You can find out more about their quality tents at iCamper.com. Oh yeah. I mean, I think back on all of the times that we've done cool little projects together, including I think we got wrangled into a jalopnik winching video at one point in time.
Right. Totally off the cuff.
It was totally like, hey guys, can we get you guys stuck and shoot a video? Sure.
Right.
we figured it out. That was really fun. Yeah, we've definitely seen each other at a lot of events, and I've heard your stories of success. So one of the things that I wanted to ask was, how did you get from wherever you were living in the country? So maybe share a little bit about where you grew up and what were some of the experiences that you had that led you to wanting to become a four-wheel drive trainer and expert.
So I grew up in the desert outside of Palm Springs, California.
Okay.
I graduate of Palm Springs High School. I won't say when.
I did not know that.
It was just a few years ago.
Right. It was a 1,000-acre ranch. And so four-wheeling was just part of daily life, really. And I think it was maybe sometime in my 20s that I realized that people did this just for fun. I remember my dad had an early Bronco. And if he showed up, to pick me up at school, when I was a teenager, that was just, oh my gosh, it was so embarrassing.
And what you would give to have that car now.
Right. Yeah. When he sold it, there was rending of garments and gnashing of teeth in the family, definitely. Outdoor industry became part of my life when I started getting involved with the hot air balloon business in Palm Springs, because I could drive a truck and trailer and I could four-wheel ground crew stuff there. And then I went away to college, was still doing that.
And what did you go to college for?
I went to college for sports and recreation management.
Well, and that's what you do.
With a coaching certification.
Oh,
right?
that's so cool.
Absolutely. I got college credit for rafting.
Oh, cool. Yeah. I did not.
I was clearly on the wrong degree program.
Right.
I went to school in Peoria, Illinois. Why?
No, whitewater rafting.
Yeah.
When I came back, I knew I didn't want to go back to Southern California at that point. I had family my family had owned property in Sedona since the 70s. And so I kind of knew that's where I'd end up. Just went to work as a Jeep tour guide in the Jeep tour business, which has of course been booming since the 60s there.
I didn't know it was that long ago.
Yeah, Pink Jeep started. Don Pratt was actually a realtor, would take people around in a Jeep
to get them excited about the area,
about real estate, and he realized that taking them around was more of the attraction than actually selling the real estate. Of course, both now.
Sure.
And I ended up, that was just kind of getting in the Jeep tour business, and Jeep business was kind of something to do until I settled down, got a real job, became an adult.
So overrated.
So, yeah. So here we are, 30 years later, that whole settling down and getting a real job thing.
Growing up is in fact overrated.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And optional.
It is. You get to make choices.
I've never had a real job ever.
Yeah, it's true.
Right.
Not that I'll admit to.
I wouldn't change that. I started my own business in 2004 after working for other companies for about 10 years. I had a lot of great bosses, and then I had a lot of bosses that we would say, you learned a lot what not to do.
Oh, sure.
So those are some of the earliest lessons.
And that's no question part of what forms us as entrepreneurs is those experiences where you see this is an opportunity or they're not doing it in this way. And I think that that's a really interesting way to go about it. Now, when you were on the ranch, so this is kind of a fun thing about you that I didn't know about the cattle ranch, because my family had a cattle ranch in Arizona, just outside of Casa Grande. I learned a lot about driving off-road on the ranch because it was just part of your job.
Exactly.
So you didn't want to get stuck. And there were some really practical, the vehicles were always aired down, not that low, but they were always aired down in some capacity. And you kind of learned momentum a little bit, but you didn't want to beat the trucks up because then you had to, you were in trouble if you broke something. Yeah. So you strike that really fine balance. What were some of the things that you learned about vehicles, or also I suspect you were riding horses at the time? What were some of the things that were takeaways from you from the family ranch?
Don't get caught.
That's perfect. That's perfect.
Yeah, there's some things that we did that certainly is. I had cousins and it was definitely, don't tell our dads. We got to figure out how to get ourselves out of this. Yeah.
That's good advice. So all that are listening, don't get caught.
Right.
Right. So what did you guys use out on the ranch for vehicles? Were they mostly full-size trucks and things like that?
Yes, mostly full-size, heavy-duty trucks. Mm-hmm. And then, of course, the tractors and we had the Bronco.
Yeah.
56 Bronco too. So.
And then you were probably towing stock trailers around in the sand and through washes and everything else. I mean, it's amazing how much you learn about driving. For me, it was definitely on the ranch. And then when I was working out at the Barry M. Goldwater and doing patrol, it's like I was always in four-wheel drive. Right. And I was doing it 8 hours a day, every single day. And it's amazing what you learn about just the subtleties of driving from that. And do you find that was the case for you?
Yeah, absolutely. Sand, we had a lot of sand and we had a lot of washes. One of our don't let our dads catch us stories was I had the long bed crew cab, and I knew just enough at that point. I think I was 12.
Okay. All right.
And I knew just enough that this wash was too narrow to get this truck across if I just went straight through, So I knew just enough that I was like, well, I'll use momentum. And it was enough to get the front bumper hung up on the far side of the wash and the tailgate hung up on the back side with all four tires hanging in the air. Boy, I could have used some Max Trax then.
It was a great story.
Hours of rock stacking and jacking.
Most of your days, even though you're managing, how big is your team now? Because you have 2 locations, actually maybe 3. Do you still do the Rubicon Trail work?
We do, yeah. As far as brick and mortar locations for rental pickup and drop off stores, it's retail stores we call them. We just have Moab and Sedona, and then we hold permits in a lot of places. Rubicon Trail, of course, we're up there just in the summertime. That's about a 10 or 12 week season, depending on snowpack on one end and wildfires on the other.
Sure.
Down in El Centro, Yuma, Glamis area.
Oh, sure.
Which, of course, this time of the year, we get to follow the good weather around for the most part. So we operate regularly on the Rubicon Trail, Moab, Sedona, El Centro. I feel like I'm forgetting something.
So you drive these vehicles nearly every day. You're oftentimes, even though you run a large organization, you're still the subject matter expert for your team. You have other folks that can do work, but you're definitely the subject matter expert. So that keeps you out in the field a lot with OEMs and other clients. You've had a lot of Jeeps. One of the questions that I was asking, in fact, you drove up in a 4xe. How is the 4xe to drive off-road now that you've really driven them?
It's currently my favorite for many reasons.
I love the idea of the plug-in hybrids. It's 21 miles of electric range they claim?
Yeah, and we've gotten up to 27. There's of course there's a lot of variability, just like gas mileage, if you're driving super fast or uphill. For the rally last year and this year too, coming up with Jeep, I had the choice of the 392 or the 4xe, and it was hands down, I want the 4xe for the amount of torque you have and the horsepower, but you get twice the range out of a tank of fuel.
Significant.
Right.
Off-road, what are you noticing? Are you noticing things that don't work that well, or are you noticing things that work even better with the electric?
It is really a different experience when you drive it in all electric mode off-road and all you hear is the crunching of the tires. Needless to say, on the 392, that's not the noise you're hearing.
Have you bought a 392 yet?
I have not. It is actually the only Wrangler drivetrain that I'm like, I don't need one of those, but I've got everything else. You don't want your
clients in one of those, yeah. For sure.
Oh, yeah. That was, of course, when those were coming out. Oh, are you going to rent those? No.
For those on YouTube, you can fill in the blanks.
They're fun to drive. You can't help but get in a 392 and turn 12. Yeah. We both have driven them. I mean, it's
I haven't actually driven it.
We've got one coming next week.
Ooh.
When were you going to tell me this?
We weren't going to tell you. No,
it's coming.
No.
It's coming, Matt.
Like of all the press cars we get, the only two that have excited me are the Ford Maverick for some reason.
Yeah, which is super cool.
There's been some really cool stuff that comes through the office. Ford Maverick, charming. 392, I want it. Like there's actually maybe a strategy that involves you working with Laura to ensure that I don't ever go too near it.
I'm staying out of that program. Right. You've had everything from power wagons to 4xe and even Trailhawk Cherokees and all. What is your favorite vehicle?
Right now? I don't know if Matt's going to look at me funny, but it's like, I didn't think I was going to like the Gladiator, but honestly.
Gladiator's great.
Yeah. As far as the body and the setup, that kind of mid-sized pickup truck setup, I didn't think I was going to like it because I have the Power Wagon, and I have the Wrangler. And it's like, this is kind of in the middle. It's not the best at either thing.
Sure.
But honestly, it's now I'm using it 90% of the time. The Power Wagon sort of has been relegated to almost exclusively tow duty.
Going to Home Depot.
Because I'm using the Gladiator on the trail now. Because it's great. I just love, we just got back from the dunes and it's like, just fling your dirty, sandy Max tracks in the back,
Yeah.
Like, I think for overland use, the Gladiator's just really fascinating.
It's really good.
It takes almost all of the benefit of the Wrangler and then makes it more comfortable.
Right.
Yep.
It's that huge wheelbase. And then once you start to do anything to them, you put them on a 2-inch lift with 37s and the proportionality of it really comes into play. I love mine.
Right.
Like, I don't know how much longer mine will be around, but
it is probably
we never know with you.
It is probably the vehicle that I build like virtually more than any other. There's something about that max tow package. If you can, the combination is tough because like I want the manual transmission, which you can't get the max tow. There's some things around it, but if I could end up with a manual transmission Gladiator, I want it so bad. I want a white one. I don't even want the Rubicon. I just want a basic Gladiator with a manual transmission, which will maximize the payload. And I really kind of want it. So that's the one I build more often. I'm like, oh, it just went up $5,000 in the last 3 months somehow.
I keep building JLs.
All right. So let's pull it back into coming back around kind of your development in the industry. What was that pivotal moment? Because I can think of mine. And what was your pivotal moment when you realized I'm going to be able to make a career out of this? Where you had that moment of success where you're now vaulted into this position of authority? I
had been training commercial guides when I was working for other companies, training these tour guides. And I was getting a lot of requests. I'd get a guide that would say, hey, my brother-in-law just bought a Jeep. He's not a guide, but would you mind spending an hour or two with him, showing him some stuff? And those started to get more frequent, and it kind of dawned on me. I'm like, yeah, there could be a demand for this. I'm gonna kind of take this program, this commercial guide training program, and kind of modify it for civilian use, so to speak, just recreational users, and then maybe one Saturday a month or something. I'll get business cards printed, put a website up, just do a little side business. And within 1 year of doing that, I had so many requests. I left working for other people, was on my own, running my own business. And it was kind of that like frying pan in the back of the head moments where it was like,
yeah, I'm really good at this.
People want this,
for sure. And you're really good at it.
Amazing. And it was very, very fun, very, very fulfilling, to just see the light go on for people, on stuff that I grew up with and just kind of took for granted.
Yeah.
Really.
We have always gotten great feedback on you as a trainer. In fact, Overland Journal uses you as our trainer. So you help train all of our new editors. You've spent a lot of time with Paula, our producer of the podcast recently, and showing her how to drive in the dunes and everything else. So there's a reason why we use you as our trainer of choice, is because you're so excellent at building upon those foundational components of driving, which leads me to another question of what do you think are some of the 2, 3, 4 key components of good driving? What makes for a good driver? Some things you can give some basic advice on.
What I always tell my students, first off, whether it's a rock crawling class or sand dunes class, is like that, when you're driving well, your career as a YouTube star is over. It's good driving looks like ballet. So if I tell you all look like a bunch of ballerinas out here, that's a good thing. That's a compliment. Good driving is fluid, whether you're going a half a mile an hour in a boulder field or 120 miles an hour, around a racetrack. Whatever you're driving, your corrections are smooth. That's your throttle, your brake, your steering inputs are all very fluid and smooth. And that comes from looking further ahead. We spend a lot of time just teaching people how to look. It's amazing how people fixate on like what's right in front of their hood. You know, if you've done track driving, taught that you don't look at the tire wall in the corner, you're looking where you're coming out on the other side.
Yeah.
And I've had trainers on tracks that they will actually block the windshield of the car. So you can only look out, you're doing your laps and you're only looking out the side.
Sure.
I don't think they do that anymore. There's like OSHA and insurance companies and things about it.
But that's modern society.
But that's a great
Before
example.
Matt's time. No.
That's a great example.
I'm going to have to think of a zinger for you now.
Okay.
You guys have gotten 2 zingers in on me.
He's gonna make old people jokes or something. Okay, boomer.
We're not boomers.
No.
We're not boomers.
Gen X, baby.
That's right. That's some great insights. What are some other things that come to mind that you think are these core principles of people driving well?
It's the looking further ahead. That's going to help you make your smooth transitions and adjustments. It's leaving your ego at home. Your ego can't be the one making the driving decisions.
Yeah, the number of rollovers that have happened just because of not stopping.
Right.
We could have saved the car.
Yeah. And the forwards at all costs mentality. Yeah. It's like no, sometimes 80% of the time getting yourself unstuck is just backing up.
Sooner than later, yeah.
Right. Exactly. It's a lot more mental. You know, people want to hear physical skills and or modifications of the vehicle. It's like go spend more money on your vehicle.
Go spend more money on yourself. You can actually take it with you.
So yeah, leave your ego at home. Look further. Smooth corrections.
You've talked a lot about, we call it mechanical sympathy when we talk about the concept. You talk a lot about being gentle on the car. Can you expand upon that a little bit?
The mechanical sympathy. So when I'm out in a Wrangler, I mean, I've spent so many hundreds of thousands of miles and hours, whatever, in Wranglers. I mean, to me, it feels like an extension of my body. That's a great place to be able to get. And some of that we can't necessarily train into you. We can do little exercises we do, with new people. A lot of times we'll put cones out so they're getting used to. It's really hard to know where the passenger side of the car is. I was going to say the right side of the car, but I know with you guys, I can't specify right or left. Passenger side might be on the left side.
That's right.
Getting used to the feel of the car and making it feel like it's an extension of your body. If you set your mind on that kind of goal, it's like, all right, now I'm in this huge prospector, and I'm going to consciously try to make a decision. Do I know where each of those 4 tires are at any given time? That's going to help you a lot. Mechanical sympathy. I have people ask me questions a lot of times like, okay, so you're climbing Oldsmobile Hill at Glamis. It's like, so what RPM are you at? I'm like, I have no idea. I hear and I feel the car. You feel that pressure back on the pedal and you're going to make it or not by how that pedal feels, if you're in the right gear. And it's different for every car. It's different. If I take the 37s off the Gladiator and put 33s on, it's going to be different. So
that's great. Yeah, that is excellent.
But it is
advice.
Like in the Rebel Rally. So Emily Miller talks about like the car is your third teammate. So you take care of yourself, you got to take care of your navigator, and you got to take care of your car. All 3 of you have to make it. And it's great when you have a passenger with you that you can use them as a gauge. If they're uncomfortable, the car's probably suffering too.
Yeah, you can always tell. And for those that are listening, when you're driving, you're starting to exceed your skills when you're no longer able to maintain a casual conversation. I know when a driver is getting to their limits is because they will get quiet. I will see the whites of their knuckles around the steering wheel. They'll tighten their neck and they'll stop talking. So when we're driving with someone, we can very quickly determine the skill of the driver in how casual they are in doing something hard. If they're very casual around it and they're able to talk to you or maybe even explain what they're doing, how the car feels, then you know that you're dealing with someone that's well within their capability. If you see your passenger start to grab handles, holding their breath, tensioning up, you see their feet pressing against the firewall. And the problem with it is that don't we want to have fun with the people that we're out with? Everybody's going to have a different level of comfort. Someone's going to be like, take me on the e-ticket ride. I want the craziest four-wheeling that we can do. But then maybe you've got your grandma with you or whatever. Have it be an enjoyable experience for your passenger, and you can tell how they're doing based upon their body language.
My dogs have an expression that they get on their face when
they're like, Mom.
When my Greyhound stands up, that means that he is no longer having fun off-road.
Yeah, there you go. We're not only being mechanically sympathetic of the vehicle, we're being sympathetic of the people in the vehicle with us.
Right.
And that's when you actually start to have more fun, because it's not an ego thing. It's not about pushing yourself or the vehicle to 90% or 95% because you can so quickly, if something goes sideways, be at 105%. And then you don't have enough talent to save the day.
Yeah.
Right.
And that happens to people all the time.
People run out. Right. I think with modern cars, I'll say that one of the greatest risks is running out of talent. Like, let's take a TJ. Driving really fast in a TJ was like self-correcting. You could only go so fast before your kidney ended up someplace else.
Yeah.
With the JK, people could take it a little further.
Yep.
JL or a Gladiator driving fast, they can take it even further. I mean, these cars they're
better and better.
You know, we think like, oh, it's a JK. It just has the Pentastar. It has just under 300 horsepower. Like pickup trucks had that 10 years ago or whatever the example is. It's still a lot of power. And these, Raptor, TRX, these things.
Yep. 700 horsepower.
You can get yourself in trouble really, really quick if you don't know what you're doing. So I think using the passenger, I think that's really important.
It's also, and I know I'll put my old lady voice on. I know Matt can't relate to this, but Scott will hear what I'm saying. It's like we come from.
We talk about Morse code.
Hey. Oh. No, I'm talking about pre-power steering and ABS. I know you can think of them as antique cars. They were just cars to us. So,
It was just called a car.
Vintage. So does that make you guys my vintage friends?
Oh.
Yes, for sure. For sure.
But those skills that you have to develop to handle, even a TJ actually is pretty rudimentary in that regard. And we got the JKs that had the first electronic stability control. It takes away that responsibility from the driver and puts it on the car to keep you from skidding out of control, in an icy turn or something like that, which is great. I think it saved a lot of people, but it's also wonderful if you have the skills to do that for yourself so that A, you're still making good driving choices, and B, you know what the car is doing and you can really appreciate what the car is doing for you. When I got in the TRX for the first time, I was amazed at, that thing stops as well as it goes.
It has good brakes.
Yeah. And it's amazingly forgiving. But at the speed at which you need it to be forgiving, if it stops being forgiving, then you are in trouble. But,
it's so easy to exceed that. And I think that leads me to the next question is, as modern vehicles have gotten so good, let's take a Wildcat or Wild Track, Bronco, lockers front and rear, sway bar disconnect, or a Rubicon or whatever. These vehicles are incredibly capable from the factory.
Right.
You don't really need to modify them in most conditions. So since the vehicles have gotten so much better, the OEMs have adopted a lot of the aftermarket accessories right into a model of the car. Training now becomes the most important consideration. What would you suggest, Nena, around training? Like, what should someone be looking for first? Like, how do they find a trainer? What is the curriculum that they should be looking at first that you have found to be most successful? Do you suggest that people use rental vehicles or their own vehicles? What are some of the things that people should be looking for in training?
That's a lot of questions.
Yeah.
Okay, so we had our next hour planned out here. No. So yes, absolutely. And thank you. I was like, Scott's my greatest marketing tool here. He's like, everyone should take training. Yeah, well, he said. No. They are very complicated. The Rubicons, as you know, now come out and they have different programming. You're in 2 high, you go to 4 high, your traction control system, your stability control system, which are 2 different programs. 4 low, then you have your axle lock front and rear, and you've got sway bar disconnect. And just, we can spend an hour trying to get people just to understand those buttons.
Sure.
And even in our parking lot, we have those bumps. We call them the bumps that are in our back parking lot where we can get the vehicles articulated just to show them that. That's like the very first thing. We've had people rent Jeeps from us. They have Jeeps at home. And, just our standard, we're sending you out for the day in a rental, our standard, 20-minute orientation. They're like, I learned more in this 20 minutes than I have 10 years owning a Jeep. So there's still, I think more and more people are coming up as trainers. Bronco has their off-rodeo program now, and that's great. The more training that is out there, the better it is for all of us.
Oh, the better it is for our trails.
Yes.
And that's why I'm a huge proponent of training, so we can keep our trails open.
Yeah. Tread Lightly. Yeah. Organizations like Tread Lightly do a lot towards educating people about. Actually, here's something we can get on board with is just some of the terminology that we use. As you know, in the automotive business, we have Toyota has the A-Track system and crawl control. And Jeep, we call it traction control and
Jeep just has
and
the actual
select speed
stuff.
Control. So we have all this different nomenclature. In the trail use world, we call this off-roading. And actually off-road by, insurance and land use definition is, leaving the established trail.
Correct.
And so some of this terminology that's common is like something that, we need to work on defining better for people because, we see it in Sedona, they think, okay, as soon as we leave pavement, we can drive wherever we want and we don't have to wear a seatbelt and we can drink whatever we want.
Yeah,
and
sure.
It's like, that's no.
not even close. Yeah, not even close.
And there are very few areas of the country where off-roading, where you don't have to stay on trail, is actually legal.
Yeah.
Like Glamis, like Cinders. And help me out here. I'm thinking Cinders is actually the only place in the entire state of Arizona that you can drive off trail. I can't think of anywhere else where it's legal.
And there are some of those in California where they're just full OHV areas and you can just kind of drive wherever you feel like.
Right.
Which I'm glad that those places exist.
Yeah, I think those places need to exist.
Yeah,
but,
for sure.
Again, to recognize that off-road does not mean off-trail.
Yes. So, but it's the term off-road. So in Sedona, you've seen them. We have the signs everywhere, the Forest Service signs that say off-road driving prohibited. We've had guests, bless their hearts, turn around and say, are we sure? I think we went the wrong way because we saw a sign that off-road driving prohibited. It's like, no. Thank you for being conscientious, but it just means you can't.
Were on a road.
You have to stay on the established trail. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, let's circle back to what kind of training should people look for first?
Absolutely responsible land use. If you do nothing else, and whether you're mountain biking, hiking, camping, whatever, I mean, before you go use public land, just have a basic understanding. And that in itself is challenging. What's Forest Service land? What's the difference between national forest and national park, state trust land? We have so much public land, especially out here in the West. Just kind of getting a basic understanding of the lay of the land and how to be out there responsibly. Then we move on to vehicles. It's really important to stay on trail and, some basic outdoor.
A lot of people just didn't grow up with a mindset of this. I mean, I like to put myself in 16-year-old Matt's shoes that grew up, in the land of the suburbs and mall parking lots and that kind of stuff. You go to the West Coast and it's just like so open.
Yeah, for sure.
Oh yeah, I can drive here. I can drive here.
Right.
I can, drive wherever. And it's like, no, I think you have to have that etiquette. And we've definitely, seen that during the pandemic where people who traditionally didn't go outside or outside in the same way are starting to go camping and four-wheeling and whatever. And instilling that respect, I think, for public lands is way easier to close a gate than it is to open it.
I would agree. And that's certainly the factor going forward is that's why training is important, because then a trainer can explain to you, when do you go into 4-low from too high to reduce trail impact and save your tires. Tires are expensive. When do you go into 4-low? When do you engage a locker? Why would you do the sway bar disconnect? Do you recommend that people start off with like a 2-day course or a 1-day course? What are some of the things that people should be looking
as much as they can? If they can spend an hour in a group setting
maybe at an Overland Expo or something like that.
Overland Expo is great. There's a lot of training opportunities there. Things like Jeep Jamborees, and there's a lot of big clubs who incorporate training, at least just some basic stuff to some of their things. We're doing that with Red Rock Four Wheelers and Moab. We've been doing some things where we're training the trail guides, which is really fun. Go train the trail guides, not just so they can explain to the people better, but kind of have some consistency there too.
Well, and a lot of those trail guides are so skilled, but they have not been taught how to teach.
Right.
That's another part of it is how do you communicate that, what you feel and what you've learned through decades of driving in Moab, how do you communicate that to somebody who just started?
Right.
And what are those basic principles? Well, that's great reminder, Nena, on I believe the critical nature of training. We believe so much in the fact that people should be spending more money on their travel than they do on their vehicle. You should be spending more money on training than you do on accessories and modifications. And if we look at it from that perspective, we will become much better drivers.
Yes.
Because if we use a stock Wrangler to go where we want to go and we learn how to drive it, then you realize, actually, I don't need that lift kit. I don't need those tires. And then we can use that money for gas and...
Right.
I'm trying to think of a place that a stock Wrangler cannot go.
Yeah, it has to get really extreme.
It gets really extreme, honestly. I mean, we were talking about, I didn't think I was going to like the Gladiators. Oh, it's going to be limited and we're going to take it. And I'm taking it on Terminator and Moab Rim and trails like that,
It's surprising.
Right. But it is on 37s. And I think that 99% of people don't need lift and tires.
We did the Rubicon and Gladiators stock. There's some things that we bypass, like crazy stuff, but
there might have been some 3-dimensional modifications.
Yes, they do that. They do that. Yeah, exactly.
But it's a pay-to-play sport too. So
what has been the thing that you've learned most from being a trainer this long? What observations have you gained about individuals and people in training?
For me, the most important thing is never stop being a student.
Yeah.
And so I'm always I'm actively looking for? What's the next lesson that I'm going to learn? There's always new tools and equipment coming out and stuff like that. But you can learn, you can see things from the newest, greenest student in your class, and they'll ask a question or point something out that you never thought of that way. And it's like, that's actually
cool.
really cool.
Humility within the training ranks is super important, because someone being teachable as a trainer is as important as them being a good teacher. And I think we see that a lot. We talk about ego earlier, that there's this impression that if I've become a four-wheel drive trainer, I have to know everything. It's physically impossible. If you had a large staff of trainers, like let's say 7P, for example, where you had a half a dozen individuals that are very well versed, you start to get closer to knowing a lot of it. But if you take one trainer that has done a lot of things, they can really only know so much. Like one person can only know, they've only been so many places. Maybe they haven't been to the polar regions, or maybe they haven't crossed the Sahara, or what. Maybe they haven't done these things that help fill in the gap. So I think for the trainers that are listening, it's keeping that sense of teachability and that humility with your students, because otherwise people get really turned off by the fact that like they've got it all figured out. None of us do. Really?
Right.
Yeah,
I know I don't.
There's like trainers I won't recommend anymore because, they went from being the guy that went to off-road parks and they're the king of Roush Creek, and now all of a sudden they're overland trainers. And
So we, the association that I'm part of, the International Four-Wheel Drive Trainers Association, that's one of my favorite things. Is like, a couple of times a year they're doing testing in various parts of the country and the world, and testing new trainers to see if they'll qualify to be certified member of the association. But it is so I usually go as an instructor to these, but I always learn a ton. You get people coming over from Australia and the Netherlands, and it's like they have tricks and equipment and knowledge that you're never going to get on your own, and that you get to share in that and learn. I learn so much every time we do a testing.
Totally. It's so fun to go to a different country and see how they solve problems. Like you go to Iceland, they have these giant dump valves on their tires. Like we worry about airing down, like it takes forever with the valve core removal thing, and it's like a half-inch pipe coming out of it. I mean, it just like it airs down instantly. And even though they're 44s, they air down in like 30 seconds.
Nice.
So those are the crazy things that you learn from other cultures of four-wheeling, which is I think really important. And a special thanks to this week's sponsor, Dometic. When you're heading out, you don't want anything to hold you back. Whether you're planning a week-long adventure or a quick overnight trip to your favorite outdoor spot, we've got you. Dometic's CFX3 powered cooler is designed with any size adventure in mind. The CFX3 allows you to bring more of your favorite food and drink along for the ride, no matter how far you plan to go. Available in multiple sizes, the CFX3 is built for the demands of outdoor use and comes with a handy app that gives you complete control at your fingertips. It's the state-of-the-art, designed for rugged use cooler that you can rely on and enjoy for years to come. Another question that I've got for you, because I've seen you at these events and I've seen you work with a lot of variety in individuals, which means some people that are green or some people that are experienced or they're commercial clients. You are an excellent communicator on the trail. What are some of the things that you've learned about how to keep people calm, how to have effective communication within a group of people that maybe don't even know each other?
Right. You need to set the tone immediately that it's okay. We're all going to do dumb stuff out here, and I'm going to try to talk you through it so you don't feel like you're the one looking dumb, just to make it fun. And also that I'll make mistakes, or all have airhead moments or something like that. And that always, at first it seems to put people back on their heels a little bit. Like, do I want to go out with this person? Do I want to follow this blonde woman? And it's just, the whole, there's no such thing as a dumb question. That's one of the first things I'll say a lot of times is I'll say, there's no such thing as a dumb question. Of course, we're going to make fun of you later, but we'll answer you seriously, in front of everybody else. And that gets everybody laughing.
Totally. So what I've observed in the events that I've attended that you were there is that you do a really thorough driver meeting in the beginning. You help people know what to expect.
Yes.
So that starts to settle them down immediately. So they kind of know what this is going to be like. And then you reassure them that, okay, either this vehicle is well suited for this, or we've got spotters that are set up at the difficult spots. And you start to make the group feel much more comfortable. And then you do interject humor into it, which I think gives the levity that those kinds of situations need, where people need to just feel like it's not a big deal. Like we're out here having fun.
Right.
This isn't about being perfect and somebody's going to get stuck.
Right.
I mean, I think even at the TRX launch. Somebody got stuck at the TRX launch up in the cinders, and maybe even some sliding off trail. And so some real challenges can come up, which are moments for people to learn if they're open to it.
Right. And it can happen to any of us. I have what is the word I'm looking for? The good fortune, I guess I should say. It's like when I do get stuck, most people think 100% she did it on purpose. Most of the time I did. I just posted a photo this morning from the dunes this weekend, and it was like, we had talked about, we're going to go take you out to some witches' eyes and teach you how to get out of them. And it's like, and I genuinely just blew it on the side of this one dune, and just ended up sucked right down the filling in the taco. And
sure.
And everybody's like, she did it on purpose.
Yes, I did.
Yes, I did. Bring me a latte.
Oh, that's so good though. I love getting stuck because it just forces me to relearn.
I need to do a Glamis course with you.
Oh,
wouldn't that be fun?
You had an open invitation,
Yeah.
That TRX would have been, oh man, that would have been fun.
Except Chris Walker got to use it in all of the dunes.
So let's talk a little bit about your motorsports career. So you have been involved with the Rebelle Rally since I think the beginning. Is that correct?
Yes.
The very first event?
Yep.
Matt and I both, and our organizations are huge believers in that event. I think it's one of the most important events that we have each year because it has gotten so much OEM engagement.
Yes.
It has really reinforced these traditional navigation skills. Most people use stock or near stock vehicles. So across the board, I think that this has been one of the most beneficial new events that I've ever seen in my career. It's very exciting to see. Tell me about how you've seen that evolve. You've won it several times. So give us the playback. When you won, what were you driving, and what you learned?
What was the first year that you won?
So we've been on the podium almost every year and won bone stock 3 times.
Yeah.
And that's always been my primary goal is always the bone stock award, to compete in the vehicle that just in the exact way it came out of the factory. And it's awesome that so many of the competitors out there, whether they're modified or not, but they're the same cars, they take them home and that's what they go get their groceries.
Totally.
It's their daily driver. And there's really no other, major competition like that in the United States or anywhere that I know of. The Jeep that I won in this year, it was a 4xe.
Yeah. Yep. So you won bone stock, you won the electrified designation.
Yes.
And you won
overall, right?
It was
and 4x4 class if you want.
I think that's a sweep. Right. I think that's kind of a sweep.
And 4 stage wins out of 7 days. Who's counting?
But they do have like an all-wheel drive class as well.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, they call it X-Cross.
X-Cross. Yeah.
X-Cross class. Cool. Yeah.
It was crazy this year. I was on Rebelle, and you dominated this year. It was
crushing.
Crazy. It's like you're sitting on, I had on my iPad the trackers, and I'm watching staff, and I'm watching this, and it's like, damn, like Nena's like miles ahead of people. And it was really impressive. And I think that's the cool thing with Rebelle that's happening is we're on the 7th year of Rebelle now.
Oh my gosh. Yeah. 7th year.
Yeah.
Crazy, isn't it?
Yeah.
How time flies.
And you're now seeing this new genre in motorsports evolving, and you're seeing competitors evolve.
Oh yeah.
Evolve. And it's getting really like the competition is harder every year. Yeah. And there's more people that can win each year.
Right.
I feel like when it first started, there's a lot of the Gazelle Rally people that were kind of those, okay, like you've kind of got the heads up because you've done this before. But now there's this domestic contingent of women that are like badass to do this stuff.
Right.
It's really cool.
Big time.
We were involved in training some people who were going to the Gazelle before the Rebelle Rally even started. Yeah. And training for the Gazelle Rally is a completely different. I can't put Rebelles and Gazelles in the same class when we're out at the dunes because it's completely different. Gazelle, it's about driving in a straight line. It's about the shortest distance. In the Rebelle Rally, it's about being accurate. We call it driving in cursive because smooth driving in the dunes isn't going to be the straight line. You're not going to be bombing up and down, dune faces. In the Gazelle, we are trying to teach them how to do that. And it's really rough on your body and your car.
Oh, for sure.
So
it is definitely not the best way to get through the dunes.
Yeah. Emily Miller, having competed in the Gazelle Rally, she knew that and she knew she didn't want to do that. And she designed this Rebelle that we get to be good drivers.
Yeah.
Efficient. And she, it's not a race for speed, but speed is definitely, like you said, we set a pace.
Well, it seemed like you had a plan this year. You realized maybe.
When? That was
winning was the plan.
I love it.
But it seemed this year your key to success was efficiency.
Yes.
Watching on the trackers or watching you come through places, you had a plan. You'd go through, boom, done, get the checkpoint, move on quickly. Where a lot of competitors kind of hang out, take some pictures, whatever. It's like that's how you were so far ahead because there are speed limits. There are public lands and it's not a race, it's a rally.
That's the place to make up time.
Yeah.
For sure.
As you know, there were plenty of competitors that were driving faster than us.
I had two people almost hit my Earth Roamer this year on like there's a 90-degree turn and we're taking photos and that means that they need to do 80 mile an hour to that 90-degree turn and lock it up. And I'm like, I just watched this one car just like straight through and I'm like sitting in doing, TSD scoring. Yeah. It was crazy. Like there were some people this year that
the organization and the competitors will need to grow from that because sportsmanship is so important in events like that, particularly since the Rebelle has always been known for that. And they've always been known for this camaraderie and helping others out. And you don't help out anyone, including yourself, when you break the rules. Actually, what it does is it puts the event at great risk, especially if someone has a very serious accident with a local rancher that's just trying to bring his groceries home. So that will be a challenge, obviously, for the Rebelle going forward, is making sure that people are not speeding. It doesn't mean that at times you don't slightly exceed the speed limit because you come off a rise, but you're constantly checking your speed. That shows that you're paying attention in my mind. Otherwise, you're just pushing. That's a real risk.
And it is the pace. I mean, we're driving 10 hours a day. And so the pace, there isn't one answer for everybody. Like you were saying, it's how long can you be relaxed? I mean, if you are white knuckle for 10 hours, you're exhausted. You're going to make some bad decisions.
Yeah, you're smoked.
Exactly. And so it's just pushing right to that. Here's as fast as we can go. That's comfortable for the car, and my navigator can still look at her stuff, and I can maintain this and not be just completely toast in a few hours' time.
Now that you've done this for 6 years, going on 7 years, what are the top 2 or 3 takeaways for you on how the Rebelle has changed you as either a person or a driver?
Oh boy. So personally, it's definitely that the control, being a business owner, being the trip leader, all the alpha, it's always just showing up just to see what gets thrown at us for the day. Emily likes to have her twists and turns and stuff, and it's great. And at first it's like stressful because you're like, oh, I'm not prepared for this. I don't, but no one else is either.
Sure.
I remember one of the big lessons for me on the very first rally was, I think it was like day 3. I don't even remember what day it was. We had what we felt was just a really crappy day. It was just like, oh my gosh, we blew it. We missed so much today, and we came back with our tail dragging between our legs and stuff. And then, when the scores come out and everybody else is kind of down and stuff too, and scores come out and it's like we were in, 3rd place for the day. It was like, well, we sucked less than most people.
And you allowed yourself to learn from that.
Right. Yeah. And it's like, you don't know, until the dust settles, what happens. You're competing against yourself, but there's no perfect day. I remember telling Emily too at one point, it was like, if you really want to screw with my head, give me more checkpoints than I can do in a day, that I have to have items on my list that don't get checked off that day. My to-do list is incomplete.
Oh, that's cool. Well, congratulations on so much success with the Rebelle, and for always being a champion of that event. And even beyond that, for those that are listening that would like to compete in the Rebelle Rally, this is a women's only navigation and driving rally that's conducted in Nevada and California. It's a very long,
technically
Arizona this year.
Yeah, technically Arizona. Okay. Yeah. So it's a very long route, and it's an incredible undertaking that Nena also provides a lot, as well as others, but there are individuals that can help train you to compete in the Rebelle. So if you've always wanted to do it, if you've thought this is the coolest thing ever, which it is, then how do you get prepared for that? The organization, the Rebelle Rally, has people that can talk to you, give you advice, help you work through the process. And then there are trainers available like Nena that can take you in the dunes, show you how to drive your vehicle in the dunes so that you're well prepared to at least enjoy the event. All of those resources are available.
And you can rent a Jeep from Barlow Adventures.
Absolutely.
Oh, there you go.
Yep.
Yeah.
I didn't know that.
We even include the Max tracks.
How cool is that? So now we're going to do a little rapid fire with you. So what is your favorite stuck story you getting stuck.
I already told you one with the don't let dad catch us with the truck on the ranch. You know?
What was your craziest? I mean, your deepest stuck?
My gosh, so most of the time I got to think about most of our nastiest recoveries. Fortunately, have not been myself.
Sure.
You know, it's other people. You know, that we just encounter on the trail. Even.
All right, so you got the whole family in the TJ,
right? And we were this. So this was like the early days of GPS. You know, right around the time Matt was born.
Mm-hmm.
And it was like, remember the old analog GPS? It was just like all you had was
the yellow one.
Yes. And the black line on the screen. There's no topography. There's no.
Sure. You knew that Denver was 600
you knew your
miles
GPS coordinates. You get your GPS coordinates and you could see your track.
Sure.
Yeah. You know, so
which was perfect.
And we had made a wrong turn in Grand Staircase Escalante, and we were yapping and didn't really realize it until we were like miles east of where we thought we should be. And of course we're in a TJ, so gas is always a significant concern. Right. Exactly. Then we got turned around and we had to use, we had a Arizona Atlas. I think it was a Delorme Atlas, and we knew our GPS coordinates. And so it was one of those moments where, you got to, trust the equipment, because you think, oh, well, for sure we're here. And the GPS coordinates say, you kind of get your fingers together on the map.
Sure.
It says we're over here.
Why am I in Monticello?
Yeah, right. And the track, like I'm looking at the road on the map and the turns it made, and it looks like our track that we just did. That can't be right. It's like, no, that's right. True. So you are over here, and you don't want it to be, because now you've gone 40 miles out of your way on a 180 mile range tank of gas.
Totally
happens.
Right. Exactly. We finally kind of made it on fumes, so that we're literally gaslight is on, and we're coming we made it back down to like Smoky Mountain Road. Now we're now like 10 miles out of Escalante or something, where we know there's gas station, and we see that this guy on this ATV 3-wheel, of course, back then.
Those days before my birth.
And he's like, oh, I'm looking for my dogs. Have you seen a couple of dogs out here? We're like, we're so glad to see you. Another human.
Someone that
okay.
Yeah. That's a great story.
It was. I had a moment of that in the dunes too, where it was. I've been out in the dunes a lot, and there was a point where we got to, okay, all right, we had a big old stuck. Somebody got seriously buried, and we're digging out. It's starting to get dark. It's an overcast day. It's like, okay, everyone, this way is the way out. And we start going, and the Jeep, the compass on the Jeep dashboard says north, and I'm like, no, we're going south. What's wrong with the Jeep? So I get out and check the compass, and it was like, oh no, yeah, trust the equipment there. Trust your tools a little bit there. So,
well, which leads me to my next question. I know you're very minimalist and you tend to do very few modifications, but what's your favorite gear that you bring along on almost every trip? It can be anything.
Okay, a shovel.
Mm-hmm.
Strap or a rope. I've gotten more and more to prefer a kinetic energy recovery rope instead of a strap. Even for towing, it's kind of nice. I think you and I have had a difference of opinion on, I use a kinetic rope a lot more than I used to.
Sure.
And I'll incorporate it in winching and everything. So just to give you a little shock absorber, sort of, so to speak. So the shovel, the rope, Max Trax is on most trips these days. And that's not just, throwing love across the table or anything here.
Yeah, they work. They work.
And your brain, honestly. So one of the...
Oh, I'm screwed.
Yeah, I know, right?
What am I going to do?
I got from...
Wait, sorry, what?
One of our trainers, John Marshall, I steal this phrase from him. It's great. It's like, you don't always have what you want, but you always have what you need.
Yeah.
And then, of course, basic stuff like first aid kit and the preparation ahead of time of, if I'm going into the deep backcountry, someone's always going to know where I am. And we have the advantage these days is, a lot of our fleet vehicles, of course, have GPS trackers on them too. So after the first Rebel rally, my husband was like, you're never going anywhere without a tracker on your vehicle again. I like that a lot.
Yeah, he doesn't have to worry about you as much. Sure.
Right. Exactly.
Yeah, you're off being an adventurer.
Yeah. So technology has made things both easier, but it's also provided, as we've talked about before, it provides a false sense of security out there.
Yeah.
And I think like we had the blizzard, remember the big blizzard in Tahoe, right before the holidays.
Oh yeah. Yeah.
And people were going, oh, it's snowing. We got to go play in the snow. And everybody's, stuck out there for hours on I-80. And it's like, I think people have the mentality of, well, I can just, I can always call 911 or something. And it's like, well, 911 couldn't get to them. I know the guys that were the first responders up there, and they were like, there was calls. They just couldn't make it. They didn't have enough people, or they physically could not get to them.
Sure.
Just going out with the mentality in the first place that you're going to have to self-recover will make you.
Or you have to self-survive. So you're going to bring blankets along. You're going to bring water and food and those basic supply. Because you never know when that 3-hour tour is going to turn into something. That's a reference that Matt didn't get.
So hey, I just sung the song, man. I know Gilligan's Island.
You know Gilligan's Island.
Okay, so I got a generational test for you. Where does this phrase come from? Pardon me, would you have any Grey Poupon?
It was the commercial with Rolls-Royce.
I'm so impressed.
Yeah, there you go.
Yeah, it's not really. I mean, that's kind of like
Matt was actually in that commercial. Oh, no. He's the little kid in the back.
Most people your age think it's from Wayne's World reference or something.
I actually grew up next to the town that Wayne's World was set in.
Ooh.
Grew up next to Aurora, Illinois. It was similar to what the movie led it to be.
Lots of mullets. Interesting. Okay.
Good to know.
Aurora, Illinois.
All right. So the next rapid fire question, if someone's going to do their top 2 or 3 modifications to a vehicle, what would you recommend that people do?
The first thing is going to be tires, because just out of necessity. So even though we talk about Rubicons, for example, coming out of the factory, Jeeps coming with more aggressive tires than we used to ever be able to get. They're still OEM tires. They're still usually a compound that's designed specifically to be quieter and more fuel efficient. So the first thing I'm going to do is dump those, let's get loud and inefficient right now. Usually the tires that come from the tire manufacturers are usually going to be a tougher tire. Yeah. So the tires are literally, the tires meet the ground, literally and figuratively, not going cheap on your tires. Get good tires for what you're going to be doing.
Okay. And then what would be the next thing?
So actually first is training, right? We talked about it. Okay. Then modification. And then tires, your equipment, just some of your basic equipment like we talked about.
Sure.
What's next after that?
What do you find that you like?
A good quality jack.
Yeah.
The factory
and to make sure that it works with the vehicle, because some people add a lift, larger tires, and the jack no longer works. Or they don't bring a base for the jack and then it doesn't work in the sand or in the mud. For sure. And I think that this is what I love about asking this question, is that it always comes back to these very simple things. Like no one has ever said a snorkel is my first. And I'm not saying that a snorkel is a bad idea. I'm just saying that it shouldn't be the first thing that you do. Make sure you've got great tires. Make sure that your spring rate is suitable to the load that you're carrying with you. I mean, these really basic
sure
things.
That your car isn't going to fall apart.
Yeah.
I don't know how many Land Rovers I've seen, and they have all their perfect accessories, and then
no maintenance.
Their tie rod end is moving like this.
Totally.
Or something.
Well, because that doesn't look cool. Yeah, it doesn't look cool. All right. So then you're an entrepreneur in addition to being an adventurer and a motorsports winner. What are some books that you have really enjoyed in any of those categories? Maybe books aren't your thing.
No, I am an avid reader. I'm just laughing because last night my husband was getting on me about, you need to go to sleep, because I was geeking out on this. I'm reading a land navigation book right now that's very engrossing.
What's the book? What's the name of the book?
Oh my gosh. And you're going to ask me the hard questions. I'll have to send it to you.
Okay. I never remember the name of the books I read.
Right.
It's a weird thing. I get it's the book where this happens.
Visualize the cover, but I couldn't tell you.
Well, we'll put it in the show notes.
Sure.
No
Absolutely.
problem. What are some other books that you've kind of come to love?
Oh my gosh.
Your favorite fiction, nonfiction?
Lois Price.
Yeah, her stuff's great.
Love her stuff. I go back and forth between fiction and nonfiction. Mm-hmm. I do love to read other people's stories of their world travels, because there's a common thread of crap's going to happen and you just figure out how to deal with it.
Sure.
And if you're waiting to go, when you think crap's not going to happen, you're never going to go.
Yeah, for sure. That's great advice as well. So now, how do people find out more about you and what you do? How do people follow you on Instagram? How do they follow you on all of the My Face Twits and all those other things?
My Face Twits. Twit Face, right. Exactly.
Do you TikTok? I'd like to introduce you to my favorite TikToker, Scott Brady.
No, it's terrible.
He's on
TikTok. It's terrible.
I don't TikTok.
Caleb does, though.
Caleb TikTok.
Yeah.
You hired a TikToker.
Did you know he was a TikToker when you hired him?
He's really good at it.
No. He's taught really me a lot of things.
Right.
I now know the phrase, it slaps. That's something that apparently...
See, now you're starting to feel Like you got another generation under you. Yeah, there you go.
Weird, life goes on.
That's how it works.
I have all these like trendy words that I say because Caleb says them.
There you go.
I don't know.
It slaps. I don't know what that means. I probably shouldn't say that out loud.
That's the way I feel about it.
Well, we should probably figure out what that means before we say it again.
Right. All right.
So how do they find out? How do they follow you on Instagram? How do they follow you on? And I'm sure you have accounts for yourself personally, and then for the business.
We're very active on Instagram and to a lesser extent Facebook, but Instagram, Barlow Adventures, Barlow.
It is
_adventures.
We're going to put it right here.
All right. And then how do they follow you individually?
Follow me individually.
Like you,
so
like
actually,
your own.
On Instagram, I don't have a personal account. I do incorporate some more personal stuff on that Instagram account than I do
on
like the Facebook page.
Sure.
Facebook, we have a Jeep rental page, a Sedona Jeep rental page, and then we have Barlow Adventures, my personal page on Facebook.
And then do you have an Instagram for your team? For your racing team?
Yes. And it's, oh my gosh, I just changed it. I think it's Team 129. If you Rebel Rally Team 129,
okay.
At least you can find it by that hashtag. So,
and then people can also find more about the Rebel Rally, rebelrally.com.
Mm-hmm.
And they can find the Rebel Rally on Instagram as well to get more information on that. I guess I've got two more questions. Where do you want to go anywhere in the world? Like what's your
Chile.
You want to go to Chile?
I don't, but that's for whatever. That's like my hot button right
Perfect.
now. Yeah.
Pisco sours and big dunes. They got them there. They got them there.
It's like the California of South America with a lot less people.
No question. It's a wonderful country.
Awesome.
Yeah, you would love that. And then last question is, which we try to ask, if you were to give just one piece of advice to someone who is getting ready to be a Rebel Rally contributor or a competitor or a traveler, what would be the words of encouragement that you would give someone new to this?
You just need to do it, and you start taking the steps. It's overwhelming, and when you get to the end of it and you look back and everything that you had to go through, you probably would be intimidated to start. You start, and it's never going to be perfect, like we talked about a few minutes ago. You have enough. Just get to the point where you have enough and take the next step.
Yeah.
And just go.
There you go. That's wonderful. That's wonderful advice. Matt, do you have any more questions for Nena?
What's your favorite Jeep? No. What? I'm going to retract that question. What do you think the best Jeep ever made is?
Ooh, ever made. It's honestly,
you could have one Jeep. You could never sell.
Oh my gosh. That's like asking you to ship one car and never sell.
This is actually the only person we've ever had on the podcast that has more cars than you, Matt.
Yeah.
So.
I want to buy Matt's coffee table book of all the cars I've owned.
I'm going to do it. One day I will have a coffee table book 1 foot thick.
It's already there almost, Matt.
Honestly, the one that I have the most anticipation for right now is the Gladiator 4xe. I love my Gladiator, but with all the other drivetrains available right now, it's the 3.6 or the diesel. The diesel's great. And if I trade this one in, it would probably be on a diesel. The Gladiator 4xe, we know, is a couple years away, but that I'm really looking forward to. And especially with leaps and bounds, how the electrified is coming, where we're going to be 2 years from now. Even we have some concepts coming for East Jeep Safari.
It's all coming.
Yeah,
it's all. I mean, the number of manufacturers that have set lines in the sand of being only electric by 2025, which is 3 years away, unbelievable.
That's why I'm keeping my LJ.
There you go.
That's the infrastructure coming along with that. Did you attend the Power Innovations or the Rebel Rally electrified session? They had Power Innovations on there, and as much as they were involved in the Rebel Rally, before that presentation, I had no idea how involved they are with getting this infrastructure out there, including portable charging,
electric
trailers and everything. So
it seems that electric has become this almost contentious issue.
Everything's contentious.
You cannot.
Why does everything have to be an argument?
I know.
It's like there's nothing wrong with an electric car. Keep driving your car if you want to. Like the fact that somebody wants to buy an electric car, why do you care?
I have an oil well on my roof.
Yeah, exactly. You're producing energy.
That's why I want an electric car. I live in Arizona. Like if I lived
lots of sun.
If I lived in Scotland, I'd think that was a pretty dumb idea.
Exactly.
But I live in Arizona, and I don't know.
Any other questions for Nena?
I mean, that's really the one Jeep that you'd have if you could have one Jeep for the rest of time.
You can't believe it. What do you want the answer to be, Matt?
I don't know.
It's like I get this question all the time. What's your favorite trail? It's like it's the one I'm on right now. I am like so geeking out on what I'm doing right now.
You're being in the moment, which is awesome. Well, Well, Nena, thank you so much for being on the podcast. We have been trying to get you out here for the longest time, a couple reschedules, but we had you here today. You have been such an inspiration to so many people. You really have. And you've always been humble about it, and you have shared your knowledge freely with others, and you've been so supportive of new people coming into the Rebel and into backcountry travel as well. Everybody that's listening, please check out Nena and her adventures, and we will talk to you next time.